Welcome to the Be Dadly podcast, where we discuss all things dadly, from being an entrepreneur while caring for toddlers to raising screenagers and talking the birds and the bees. We're here to help you traverse the vast and dynamic landscape of fatherhood. Enjoy practical advice, lots of puns, and even a few heart-touching moments.
And the dad jokes are pretty good too.
And now your host, Brandon Jones.
And just like that, we are back, folks. Welcome back to the Be Dadly podcast. I'm Brandon Jones, your host. And today I have a very special guest. Ian Tompkins is here with me today. I want to just say something about Ian real quick and why I brought this guy on the show. So Ian is one of these guys who has been doing the work. And when I mean doing the work, I'm talking about that inner work, that inner challenge that we all face with managing our patience, managing our self-control, having a sense of, self that's more centered, more balanced, more focused. And just in the few conversations I had with Ian, I knew immediately, I was like, wow, dude, you've been doing it. And just in your cadence and your rhythm and your voice, I feel more relaxed. That part of me that feels anxious, that part of me that feels like it just has to go, is more relaxed just listening to you. And I'd love for you to come on and talk on the show about how you've done this work, how you came to it, how it's impacted you and your family, et cetera. And so that's what Ian's gonna be sharing with us today. So if you're like me, if you're one of these guys that's just like, oh, I'm constantly struggling with my patience and I feel like I've got to get stuff done all the time, I get all this anxious energy, I think you're going to get a lot out of this show. So please do stick around. If you can, be sure to like, subscribe, share, do all that stuff. It really helps our channel out, helps us reach more dads. And sit in, buckle up, and let's get into it. Ian, thank you so much for being on the show, brother.
Yeah, you got it, Brandon. I'm happy to be here, man. And I appreciate you inviting me on.
Yeah. So Ian, tell me a little bit about paint the picture for our audience about your fatherhood setup. How many kids you have, that kind of thing.
Yeah, right on. I have one son. He's 3 years and 3 months, something along those lines. He was born November 16th, 2019. I have a lovely wife. And yeah, that's my little family.
Where are you guys located?
We live in Ithaca, New York.
Okay, awesome. Now, you have this young son. He's 3, probably bursting at the seams, just loving, full of energy, full of all this vitality, curiosity. He's much more mobile than, when he was little and everything. So what has been the experience for you with his age right now? What's that like?
I would say the one word that comes to mind first is fun. He is, like you said, he's running all the time. He's curious. I think that's probably one of the biggest things I've learned from him is just that incessant curiosity, right? It's never ending for him. Mm-hmm. So yeah, fun, curiosity. I guess those 2 words probably come to mind the most.
And what's fatherhood been like for you? Has it been challenging? Has it been pretty, you've kind of just acclimated very easily, or what's it been like?
Yeah, great question. It's been challenging at times. I think overall it's been just beautiful. I came into fatherhood a little bit later in life. So he was born when I was 42. And as you mentioned, I've been doing, deep work for a long, long time. So I feel really grateful that he was born later in my life so that I could have gone through that experience in my own life, right? And then can offer that wisdom and groundedness to my relationship with him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm curious to know, when we talk about deep work, like when you say it, because I have my sense of what I think of as deep work, but what do you think of when we talk about the deep work that we need to do, maybe as men, as fathers, but just what is that work?
Great question. Yeah. For me, the deep work is really deeply reflecting on our thoughts, how we show up in our world. You can even reflect on your past and see how that influences the decisions you're currently making, and giving yourself the time to really think about where you come from, where you want to go, and who you want to be right now to kind of mingle all that together.
Mm-hmm. And then, with a guy, because I feel like for me, like it's like I know I need to do that stuff and I'm so busy, you know?
Mm.
How did you integrate it into your life? How did you make that a part of you?
Hmm. Yeah, one thing that's been really profound for me is meditation.
Mhm.
And I started meditating when I was 19. I was in a really tumultuous relationship at that time and needed to figure out what was going on, how to get out of it, if I wanted to get out of it. So initially, meditation for me was sitting on the mat
Mhm.
for 15, 30, sometimes an hour and a half. And then I realized I could start to meditate at any moment, right? So I do still do meditation on the mat, so to speak, or on the cushion. Probably I use a bench, in fact. But I realized that I could meditate while I was standing in line at the grocery store. Just take a minute to stop, right? Look at your thoughts, engage with what's available to you in that moment, and just get really present. I think that's probably been the biggest thing for me.
You know, it's so funny. I know exactly what you're talking about, where it's like if you've practiced meditation enough, you can get in that zone, even in a grocery store, even at, for me, like while I'm doing my dishes sometimes or something. I noticed today, for example, I was about to go through a light and I had a green light, and the person behind me was trying to get over into a turning lane, and they had their blinker on and they were trying to get in, and there was a Mercedes, and I don't even know if it matters what kind of car it was, but there was a car there that was trying to let them in, and this person was just like going huge ways, like just go, go, like, and it was just so much attitude. Like, so, and the person in the other car that's trying to go over was like getting over, like looking at him like, dude, what is your deal? Like, and here's what the irony was. So I'm watching this drama, this little melodrama play out in my rear view. And what stood out to me the most was that the car that was waving with so much angst, so much anger, so much like rushing this person, it was a red light. Like they weren't going to go they were literally not,
uh,
it wasn't like they were waving them on like, go so we can make it, go so we can get in the green. No, no, no. It was red. You were just going to sit in the exact same place. Why wave? Why so much anger? Why the hostility? You're
hmm,
literally not going anywhere, bro. Like,
that's pretty funny, man.
I mean, and in my head, I'm like, yeah, they don't meditate. They really do. Like, they're not getting it. So, anyways, that was a funny moment. But I know what you're talking about. This feeling of that presence, that mindfulness that you can tap into
Hmm.
in any place once you've cultivated it. So it sounds like you're saying that for you, when at 19, there was a negative emotional phase of your life that you were going through, and you had to kind of work through it, and you were trying to look for the healthiest way to do it. And meditation showed up for you somehow, some way. Did it was a book or a person, or you just knew about it and you thought, why don't I give this a shot?
Gosh, man, that's a good question. I think it was probably something I found on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
The funny thing about the internet at that time, so we're talking like 1996 probably, is that you could go on the internet and not find things that you were looking for. Now we don't have any, these days it's you can find anything you want and anything that you don't want. But that's a side note. I think it was probably something I found on the internet and it piqued my curiosity and I thought I'd give it a shot and it fit well for me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious. There, for me, there's like this, and this thing happens with so many things, as I'm thinking about it. It's so funny, but there's like this anxiousness or this discomfort of sitting still.
Mm.
Like it's like you feel like you're supposed to be doing something else, or you feel like you're wasting time, or you feel like you gotta move, you know? Do you still get that? Is it, after being 20 years of meditating, is it still there? Or have you actually valued the experience so much you don't feel that anymore?
Oh, it does crop up. Yeah, for sure. And the interesting thing about, I think one of the misconceptions about meditation and what people find most challenging is they believe that they're supposed to rid their mind of thoughts or just have an empty mind. What I find most useful about meditation is it allows you the opportunity to look at each thought one at a time. So as you're describing that, right, you're having all these thoughts about, oh, I should be doing this, or oh, I could be doing that, or what am I doing sitting here, and et cetera, right? So you could take a look at each one of those thoughts while you're sitting in the meditation. I think that's one of the beautiful things about it is really slowing yourself down and then taking a look at the thoughts and see what value they hold for you, right? Because a lot of times the thoughts are just thoughts, right? And if you're going to spend 30 minutes on the cushion or on the bench, it can be way more valuable than what it was that you were thinking you should be doing instead.
Let's talk about this really quick for the audience. I want these guys to understand, because I know they probably heard it a million times. I know, meditate. I know. But what has meditation done for you?
I mean, the short answer is it's changed my life, right?
Yeah.
Going from anxious, scared, hurting, a lot of negative emotions, sometimes anger. I don't really have a strong propensity for that, but it does exist, right? And now, there's a sense of peace and gratitude that I reside in all the time, in every moment. And that's not to say that things crop up that will make me angry or cause me frustration, but now I'm at a point where I can slow down pretty fast and be like, hold on a second. Is this serving me in any way? Having this emotion or having these thoughts, because our thoughts and emotions are so closely tied together. And I can evaluate whether it is useful for me or not. And if it's not, then I can choose something else. And that's another thing, I think, as you meditate and start to look at the thoughts more clearly, one at a time, you start to realize that you have a choice of what you can think or what you want to think. So I think that's probably been the most valuable thing from the meditation and what has set me up for now in my life.
Yeah. So having that inner calmness, feeling that state of gratitude, having the ability to actually choose what you are going to drive energy towards as opposed to just being pulled by it. That's all been a part of this experience for you.
100%. Yeah, man.
Because I know for so many parents, again, I talk to dads all day. One of the words that's used a lot is overreactive or just reactive, and it's like on some level, like we know, like we're like in our head, we're like, I know it's not going to help me to react. I need to respond. I need to handle this in a way that is more conscious. I just can't fire away here. It hasn't helped in the past. I know it's not going to help in the future, but they just keep repeating. They repeat that cycle in that process over and over, and they're angry at themselves in some ways. They feel guilty. They're like, I know I overreact. I know my kids are just kids. I know part of it is me. I hear that a lot. I mean, this is like a lot of us dads feel that way, right? And I say us because I felt that way, and of course, every one of us can be taken by anger, at some point. But it's like, are we doing the small thing? Like I think of meditation as this like little pill. I take it in the morning for me after my shower. It's like a little pill. It takes 5 minutes for you to digest it and you must sit still. For me, it's 5 minutes. I just do 5 minutes, but you must sit still and allow your body to digest this pill. But if you take this pill, you will respond better to your family. You will sleep better at night. You will fall asleep more easily and have a more deep rest. That's scientifically proven. You will be less reactive. You will be more consciously clear about what you really want and what you don't want. You will, in my experience, have a more direct spiritual connection. Whatever religion you're a part of, I think that would be true, truly. Especially, I personally meditate with God. I invite God into my meditation. I think the reason I put the weight on there of that, for me, that condition of I'm inviting God to this experience to contemplate my life with God, is because I don't want to waste time in the meditation with these, oh, do I need to go get the groceries? Oh, what's today? I don't want to waste time with that. So I'm like, if God's here, we're not talking about groceries right now. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to have a much more intimate and important dialogue. And maybe I need to have another meditation where it's like, hey, free flow. let's see what shows up. There might be some other stuff here that's smaller that may be nipping at the heels that I don't ever seem to notice. So I'm open to that. But yeah, it's been a game changer for me personally as well. And it is a great tool. It's not a terribly difficult tool, and it's pretty inexpensive. I will say you do have to, it's kind of like the burning on the hills kind of thing. You're going to have to do that a little bit. You feel that. I set a timer because I know when the timer gets up, I can, I'm done. And generally what's crazy to me is that the timer will stop and I'll want to keep going.
Mm.
So the timer really just is more like a reminder, and it doesn't it doesn't go off like a normal timer. I use Insight timer, which is a meditation timer, and it just goes off like a little singing bowl. It's like, dong,
Mm.
and then it rings out all the way out, and then I'm just silent. It doesn't keep going. I don't have to click. It's just a reminder that my 5-minute timer is up. So what other practices have you done to cultivate that inner self, cultivate that part of you that has more conscious awareness? They can serve your family, your wife, and your child in a better way. What other work would you say was really important to you? Foundational stuff.
Yeah, I think journaling has been another key piece, right? There's a lot of talk out there right now about journaling.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first started, I wasn't getting it. It wasn't working for me, where it was kind of like almost like a diary thing where I'd sit down and I'd just kind of write out the day, or I'd write out some thoughts and things like that. But as I developed this skill, right, like anything else, meditation, journaling, anything, it's a skill that takes practice to get good at, and it can morph over time, right? So what I started to be able to do is to sit with my journal and just kind of let the thoughts come through the pen, if that makes sense.
So become more like a conduit.
Kind of more like a conduit to, I would say what's present for me, but really allowing that deeper sense, the reflection to take a good foothold and then present itself in a thought that's on the paper. So that's one. Go ahead.
I just did this exercise with a coach. It was the end of 2022. We were preparing for 2023, and we had an exercise, and he literally said, he's like, I don't want you to think that you need to write all about 2022. I don't want you to think you need to write all about 2023. I don't want you to think you need to write your goals or any of that. We're going to do that, but that's not what this exercise is for. I want you to just write whatever shows up. And he called it a brain drain, which I don't think is a great name, but that's only because I don't want to imagine my brain draining out of my head. But he called it the brain drain. And he said, let yourself get it out. And he's like, we're going to put a 10-minute timer, and I'll let you know when 10 minutes is up, and you guys just write and see if anything shows up. And I was a little stumped at first, and then I got my pen moving. Boy, by the time my pen got really moving, I could not stop. And I was like, wow, there is so much in there that wants to come out. It was very interesting. So he reckons he does that every day. He gets this stuff out of his head every day.
Great idea.
And I was like, wow. He's like, the amount of energy that you release, because now it's on paper. You could go back to it. You can reference it. You can decide whether it's important or not. It's done. You don't have to keep holding it in your head and juggling it and passing it back and forth and putting it on the back burner, then bringing it back to the front burner. Like, it doesn't have to happen. It's on the paper. And it was really, really, really interesting. I mean, it's just a different way of journaling. When I think of, everybody has a different way of thinking of journaling, right? Like I do the gratitude. I am grateful for, in the morning, I do a broad gratitude. In the evening, it's a micro. So in the morning, it's what am I broadly grateful for? In the evening, it's what was I grateful for today that happened?
Beautiful.
And that's been a great exercise. And that's like one form of it. Some people are like, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how was your day? What would have made it a 10? What do you plan on doing tomorrow? There's that kind of stuff. But I get it's funny now, after doing the brain drain exercise and then hearing you, there is so much value in just allowing the pen to kind of just start doing its work.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Another thing, if I could just switch to another thing
Please.
that has been really useful for me, is to develop a sense of gratitude, right? I love that you brought that word up. It gets thrown around a lot these days in lots of different circles, but there is really strong evidence to suggest that it really creates a different action in your brain of
Absolutely.
chemicals, right?
Yes, it
That
does.
can start to bring about feelings of happiness and worth and the value that you bring to your family, that you bring to your work, that you bring to yourself. And that leads me to think also about self-compassion, right? Talking about self-love and compassion. So I have developed a profound sense of gratitude. And I'll tell a little story about that. So I was in a second tumultuous relationship in my life. It lasted for 8 years. And it was really, really challenging. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who we've been friends since before I got into that relationship. And we were talking about it, and I was telling him just how gory it could get at times in that relationship. I was acting in ways that I could never have imagined. And he said, "Oh man, I was in one too. It lasted for like 7 years. If only I could have that time back." And I said to him, I was like, that's an interesting thought, right? But for me, I'm grateful for that time, right? So
Oh, right.
I I wouldn't be the Ian Tompkins that I am today if I hadn't spent that 8 years. Now, would I like that time back? I guess I would say yeah, but I'm grateful that I was in that space and grateful for that relationship. And it sounds funny to say that in a way, right? But if you can cultivate a sense of gratitude for anything that's occurred in your life, it'll change the way that you show up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a very interesting thing, which is that you cannot be grateful and anxious or upset or angry or any of the other emotions at the same time.
Mm,
So the moment you actually feel gratitude, your brain switches to a whole nother section.
yeah,
So you're feeling anxious, you're feeling stressed, you're feeling upset, and you can, you might first say the first one, you're like, oh, I'm grateful for whatever the sun. You might grunt one out. And you might grunt another one out. But if you can get on a little bit of a roll and actually think, actually, I am really grateful for that. Actually, you know what? Yeah, we do have a lot to be grateful for. We do have a roof over our head. You start getting into these little things where you're like, you know what? I should be grateful. When you do
mm,
that, your brain starts producing, you're saying, like those neurochemicals that are so different than anxiety. They're so different than stress that your brain can't hold both.
right.
And gratitude can actually be like a medicine for the anxious, stressed energy. It's funny how meditation can be like a pill, it could be like a medication. Meditation can be a medication, but it's just not going to come in a bottle.
Yeah,
That's going to be a t-shirt I'm going to make.
nice.
So, and it costs you 5 minutes a day. When I learned this idea that gratitude can change the neurochemicals to the point that your body viscerally has the physiology is completely changed.
Mm,
Stress and gratitude, the experience of stress and gratitude cannot coexist in the brain at the same time, and thus the body. So when I learned that, I had this one key place where I always felt a high degree of stress, and even I had a propensity to anger in this moment, and I knew it was a high trigger moment because I was in at the time I was in anger management. And one of the things that we had to do was identify our triggers. When I'm hungry, when I'm tired, when the kids are being loud, when the house is a mess, like what are my triggers? Right? What are those moments so that I can kind of get ahead of them? And I noticed that whenever I got home from work and I opened the door, I generally noticed how messy the house was. And I
mm,
had a young child. I think at the time he was like 3. Yeah, 3, 2 or 3, maybe even 2. And there were these kid toys everywhere. The front of our living room like had toys all over it. My son's mother was like doing like an organization project that seemed to go on forever. And there was all this stuff everywhere. And so during the time I was in this anger management class, I was like, when I get home, The moment I get home and I open that door, I always have this angry outburst for at least 15 minutes. And then after that gets done, I feel bad. I make up an apology, or I make an apology, not make up an apology. I make an apology to make up for it. I cook dinner, I do all that. And then the evening kind of goes on, but I always have that moment where I'm just really, really angry. Why are the dishes not done? Why are the toys everywhere? Oh, I stepped on a Lego again, whatever it is. I was just angry. And so what I did is I said, okay, fine. If gratitude can change my state, I am going to try this in that trigger moment. And so what I did is I said, it was an algorithm. They called it an implementation intention. And it is a small plan. It's a win-then plan, which is incredibly powerful. I use this in my coaching. When I touch the handle to my door, then I will start practicing gratitude. So then when I got home, I grabbed the door handle and I was like, here's the moment. Trigger, boom, gratitude. I am grateful for this door because it doesn't let people just walk into my house. I am grateful for, oh, look at my little guy. Here he comes. I'm grateful for him. You know what? He has a lot of toys. I'm grateful that he has abundance. I'm grateful for my partner who's over there trying to make, dinner or whatever. I'm grateful for it. And it just started going in gratitude. It changed the whole way I showed up at home. I had so much to be grateful for, but I couldn't see it through my anger. And when I started to be grateful, when I showed up at home, the whole body chemistry, my whole experience, everything just changed. And I actually just came in and I just fell into the fold and just got moving, and it just worked. It just worked. So gratitude works.
Well, it's beautiful, beautiful story, man. Good work for you, right? Putting that in and making that happen. And I can imagine, maybe you can speak to this, but having that practice when you got home of bringing gratitude into your thoughts and into your heart, it probably affected other parts of your life outside of home, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we all take for granted, and it's a lyric to a song, I'm too blessed to be stressed. And I think it's this one great band, Revolution is the band. And he's like, too blessed to be stressed, too blessed to be stressed. And in my head, I'm like, that's all of America, basically. Because if you've ever been to any country that's really struggling, we are too blessed to be stressed. How in the world are we stressed?
Right on.
We have so much. Everywhere we go, we have so much. We are blessed beyond belief. And it showed up for me in all kinds of other places where I looked out in the world and I'm like, people pray for my problems. I'm upset about kid toys. People pray they could give their kids toys.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed that my partner is organizing our house. People pray to have an organized house. They pray to have a partner that cares. They pray to have a partner. People pray for the thing that I see as a problem. People pray for that. They pray for my problems. Who am I, to get mad? It's really, it just takes perspective. And I think gratitude has been a big part of that for me, for sure.
Awesome. If I could add another thought kind of along those lines, where two things can't really coexist at the same time, would be love and judgment. Right. So a lot of these fellas that are listening today are probably judging themselves, or maybe or have judgments about others. A judgment about others is often a judgment we hold about ourselves. But if we love, we can't judge, and vice versa. If we're being judging, we can't love. So for me, one of the things I've been cultivating is a stronger sense of love for myself, for my family, for what I have, right? That leads to gratitude as well.
One of my mentors used to say this, and it's always stuck with me. He said, we judge others by their actions, but we judge ourselves by our intentions. So we don't give fair judgment because we're not judging ourselves by our actions. We judge ourselves on what we intended, and we neglect to notice that in another person.
Yeah, so true.
And, this judgment piece, I think about like how we're not capable of being great judges.
Hmm.
And I say that because generally speaking, we never have the full picture ever.
Right.
We don't understand. Like here's an interesting fact I recently learned. I'm going to be talking about this a lot because it plays into everything. But I recently learned this fact of the objective world. I'm talking about the kind of light spectrums you can see, the kind of colors that you can pick up on, the photons, the mitochondria, the bacteria, the germs, the other sides of the world, the sounds that we can't even hear. Think about how the dog can hear the whistle, but we can't hear it. Sounds we can't hear, lights we can't see, colors we can't perceive of the objective world. And this is going to be a fun one. Ian, what do you think the percentage is of our ability to perceive the objective world?
Oh, wow. I don't know. I imagine it's pretty low, 10-15%, I would say.
Yeah. 0.036.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing, isn't it?
That is so small. 0.036. So what that means, and that's only what we are currently able to measure. We're still constantly finding stuff.
Yeah, right.
Right. I mean, we don't even know how the black holes, we just don't understand. Where does that go? What's that do? Whatever. There's still stuff to find, right? Dark matter, whatever. There's stuff to find that we haven't even figured out yet, mainly because it keeps being outside of our perception. So we also know, like when you think about what you know, what you know, you don't know. What you know, and what you know, you don't know are nowhere near as big as what you don't know,
Yes, so true. Well said.
I'm going to bring it back to the judgment piece. So if we're perceiving almost nothing and we're really poor interpreters of what we perceive anyways. If that is the case, then maybe when the biblical text says like, we don't get to judge. We're not the judge. God is the judge. Maybe that's because God gets the whole picture and God is a fair judge, which means that God will give in proportion to what is deserved. No more, no less. But we don't do a very good job of that. It's like when you hear, you could hear that one person committed a felony or a murder. Another person committed the exact same murder or felony, and they got completely different charges. One's going to be there for 15, 20 years. One person, people are worse. And I don't know how many are, but there are people in prison right now that were dealing marijuana. They never did anything violent. They dealt marijuana. They're in prison, but marijuana is completely legal. It should be like an automatic thing. Like, hey, if you legalize it, you got to set these people free. But we don't. And so it's like, we're not great judges. So while we're walking around, and maybe I'm not being a fair judge of the person in the Mercedes that was like, but to me, the thing is that I had my small little window I was looking in a rear view window for 20 seconds. That's what I saw. That's my story. That maybe while those two were driving next to each other, they had some interactions on the way to me that I missed. That's the thing. We literally miss the picture all the time. We do not see, we're not perceiving whatsoever on any great level. And in so many ways, we got that should humble us and just say, hey, maybe I'll judge a little less. Maybe I'll love a little more. I used to be really worried about looking dumb. Like, I don't want to look dumb. And then I realized I was like, I am dumb. So what if I just got okay with the fact that sometimes I'm dumb and I could be okay with that? So then when somebody's like, oh my gosh, you're so dumb. I'm like, dude, you don't even know the half of it, and I get okay with that. They have nothing. It's like pulls them off balance because they're like, whoa, that's not what I thought would happen.
Right.
So judgment, love and judgment. We've talked about meditation, journaling, gratitude, love and judgment. Guys, I hope y'all are listening. This is like the best stuff. This is the juice.
This is the juice. This is what makes life just so beautiful and rich.
Tell me more. What else has been in there in that inner work of yours?
Yeah. So another piece is, how to describe that? It's about feeling your feelings That sounds like a silly way to put it, but really allowing feelings to be there and being okay with it, just like you're kind of describing it, this conversation you had with your son, the way he's showing up, and coming to an understanding of what it feels like when I have a certain thought, right? So let's say somebody does something that causes some anger to arise in my emotions or feelings. Well, there's a thought attached to that. So if I can identify what that thought is, then I can start to manipulate the feelings and the thoughts, right? And a lot of us survive in a fight or flight mode kind of all the time. And as we start to learn how to regulate our emotions, we don't have to reside in the fight or flight anymore. We can start to choose. Again, we go back to choice, right? We start to choose what we think and then what we feel.
Mm-hmm.
And then that informs the actions that we're going to take in our life.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. Yep.
Because we think that, it seems like we just act. And sometimes we do, right? We get reactive, but we have the option not to be reactive. And you brought that up earlier, right? Being responsive as opposed to being reactive. And we can cultivate that option, those choices for ourselves.
Absolutely. So I'm really glad that you connected these thoughts, feelings, they lead to actions, allowing yourself to feel feelings and then being willing to look in and try to understand those feelings, actually being willing to say, hey, and where's this really coming from? Or why do I keep feeling this way? What is the cause of this? And how can I work with it? Another mentor of mine used to say, and I use this all the time now, creative and reactive, same letters, very different outcomes.
So true.
And then I read, I'm a big Bohm fan, David Bohm, and he has this thing he calls thought as a system. Okay. And I'm going to not get too heady with it because it gets really deep. But essentially it's that you plugged in when you were born, okay, you plugged into a logos and a framework, not necessarily by choice per se, just by the very fact that you were born into the culture you were born into. And they use a certain type of language and they talk about things in a certain way. And so, for example, you can look at the Latin, the Spanish, for example, is so romantic and there's so much emotion. They're very emotional in a beautiful way, beautiful emotion. Some of the northern cultures are a little bit more cool. And, I think like the Russians, they're it's like, we're not going to be loud. We're not going to be big. And, and you go to you go to Colombia or something there's like loud noises and there's just all this emotion and there's so much going on. And then you go to some of these like northern countries where it's just a lot more like, just kind of more German, that kind of thing. Like it's just different. It's just not the same kind of energy. But the idea what David Bohm was sharing is like, you didn't choose it, but you were born into it. And those words that you have available to you, for example, sometimes you'll talk to somebody and they speak a different language and they're like, I don't think you have this word in English. So we have other concepts and context that are not necessarily available depending on the language that we speak.
Mm-hmm.
And someone else can only describe around what they mean, right? And that means that you're plugged into this system of thought that is already there, and it will affect how you think and feel in the future. And then because thoughts and feelings direct behavior, now you are within a system that will have an impact on your behavior, whether you realize it or not. This is why culture has an expression throughout its people. Of course, there can be outliers here and there, but it pushes out an expression of itself on behaviorally, right? And it's a lot through the thought and system that you're already plugged into. And he talked about this. We notice that we're thinking, and once we have completed a thought, we have it as a thought. So there was thinking and then there was thought. Thought often gets put into something and it doesn't leave. It stays in our brain as a little bit of a framework that then connects other dots, right? Then we have feelings. We know when we're feeling things, but we forget about felts. And we forget that they get captured. So there's thinking goes to thoughts, feelings go to felts. And then felts and thoughts inside of our body, which are so closely correlated that you can almost like they're very difficult to tease apart. The moment you have the thought and the feeling, they seem connected. They're like two sides of the same coin. This is how I'm thinking about it. This is how I'm feeling about it. This is what I'm deciding to do because I think and feel about it. Right. So why does that even matter? Why does it matter, for example, that we're thinking and that we're feeling and that that's driving our behavior? Well, because if you're being reactive and you haven't dug into the thoughts and feelings, it's extremely difficult to change the behavior.
Yeah. And the behavior leads to the result, right?
Exactly. And then that result leads to more thoughts, to more feelings, to more behaviors, and we go round and round and round. And so back almost completely full circle back to the meditation part where you can actually meditate on your thoughts and feelings in a way that allows you to get in there. And what's great about it is when you're exploring a thought or feeling, you can't help but change it in some way, or have some adaptation that could be, if done correctly, beneficial. You can get more insight. You can forgive a little bit. You can judge a little less. You can try to bring love into that thought, empathy into that thought. And then from that love and empathy that you're bringing in as conditions while exploring the thought will produce totally new behaviors that you were before just a slave to, and now you are a master of because you have cultivated yourself in this way, which is why this is exactly why I wanted to have you on, because this is what you've been doing. You've been going in and cultivating your inner self so that your behavior outwardly is not so random and reactive, but you have a little bit more directive nature over it.
Yeah. And I can reap what I sow, right? So I can see the results of my labor, right? My relationship with my wife is amazing. My relationship with my son is amazing. And that's really, if we're talking about gratitude and compassion, man, that's a lot of the work that I've done has allowed that to be real in my life.
How do you tease apart the inner chatter from the conscious you, like the actual voice that is you versus that just chatter?
And that's such a good question.
I mean, I'm sure it's a skill, but there is kind of a distinction between them.
I think that's true. And I think as I'm thinking about it, that you got me on that one. I had to reflect on that. So I think it comes down to the choice and intention, right? Like thinking about who I intend to be and making the choices about what I'm going to do to show up as that, right? What action am I going to take? And that leads me back to the thoughts and feelings that are going to be required to see that through. And if I can do that, then the chatter becomes apparent, right? You can start to really see the chatter and be like, oh, okay, there's just some nonsense thoughts that I don't really need to go to give any credence to.
So I love this. Let me go back to this for a sec. So know that I've got what you're saying. You're saying that one of the things is to just make a conscious choice so that you're in that seat. Because when you say, I intend this in my life, that it's like, I'm the one that's going to have dominion, right? Not just the chatter, not just the little automatic tape. I'm going to create an intention, which is me directing the show, and then making sure that I get my thoughts, feelings, and behavior in alignment with that part of me that has made this intention. Is that right?
True. Yep.
So
I would say that's right.
And so I totally agree with you. And I've been in this unique thought experiment. I actually talked to you about this a little bit before the show, which is that I went through COVID. Guys, I had a hell of a week. I had COVID. I'm telling you, it was a week. I had COVID, and then an ice freeze came through Austin. and it set over Austin for like 4 days, and it froze our tree branches so much that canopies snapped and fell onto our house and onto our deck. Huge canopies of the trees, of these oak trees, just snapped. I've never seen anything like it. While I'm having this COVID experience, because the tree snapped in my yard, well, guess what? They snapped all across the city. I was no weird exception. We had category 1 to category 2 hurricane damage on our infrastructure from this ice freeze that lasted like 3 or 4 days, and it took out our electricity grid, and which also took out our water. We went on a water boil notice because the water plant treatment facilities also lost power. So this is happening while I am having, and I know I say while funny, I'm Southern and it's a weird way to say it, but all this time I'm having COVID. I'm in my bed with body aches and fevers and chills. And literally I like hear like snap, boom. I thought it was like glass, but it was actually ice that shattered everywhere. A canopy snapped, fell on my deck. To tell you how bad I was feeling at the time, I did not even get up out of bed. I was like, yeah, that's about right. That's about where we're at right now. So anyways, I go through that. So I went the whole week having COVID and having to deal with the no power, and then trying to figure out how to heat the house and do all that stuff and feed the kids and everything with no power. Luckily, we have gas. Very grateful for that. And I go through all that. And then at the end of the week, my son's mother and him get COVID. My youngest son, my older son doesn't get it, but the youngest one does. And then my son's mother, she gets it. And so now they have COVID. And so that goes on for a whole nother week. And so anyways, it was just a crazy week. This has a point. The point is that there was this part of me that as I got better, as I started getting better, I felt this urge to push, because I was like, you know what? I got to sweat this out. I just got to get it out of me. Like I can feel my body winning. I'm going to make sure it wins by giving it some vigorous exercise. You know, I've been kind of sleeping in too much. I'm going to get up early. So I got back to my 4:30 a.m. routine in the gym at 5 a.m. and I'm hitting it and I'm pushing it. And I realize I'm kind of wrestling with my inner devil. And I'm going to explain what I mean. Satan, Satan, lowercase, not uppercase Satan, like we think devilish horn beast. The Hebrew word Satan, and I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it correct, Satan, but it's lowercase Satan. So don't picture the devil. Picture this word, because it's just a word. But that word means challenger. It means opposer. So in the Bible, the lowercase Satan in the Hebrew, that meant the challenger, the opposer. Inside of each and every one of us, we have an opposer that wants to oppose the higher self. So you say, for example, Ian, when I intend this to happen. So the big I has an intention of what it wants to happen. The little I, the opposer, the Satan within you, it says, no, that's not really important. You're a little busy. No, you don't feel like it. Oh, but come on, let's just stay in bed. It feels so nice. It will say just about anything it can to get you to not do what you said you wanted to do. You intended, big I, to do something. Little I says, I'm going to distract you, delude you, prevent you in every way I can from you actually achieving what you want to achieve. And by the way, I will use your thoughts against you. I will use your feelings against you. I will use everything at my disposal. I will even try to make you think I'm your best friend, and how I will tell you just how nice and warm and cozy your bed is, when really I am trying to keep you from going to the gym. Mm-hmm. Right? So this is why I ask, how do we tease apart the part of ourselves that is our conscious self and the chatter, or that part of ourselves that is opposing the conscious self? And what I did recently is I recognize that part, and I call him, I'm literally like, he is my Satan, Satan, whatever, however you want to say, he is my opposer. And I have fired him. P.S. His name is also Brandon. This is why you got to be careful. Like, Ian, you have this inside of you. His name is Ian. And so I
Indeed.
I could speak to him or I can speak to you, but the truth is that they're both you. They're just different parts of you. For example, 9 p.m. Brandon that knows I need to get in bed has to compete with 5 a.m. Brandon who doesn't want to get out of bed.
Right.
So I have decided I have promoted my higher self. I have fired my lower self. And when I recognize my lower self as trying to get in there and worm around, I'm like, hey, bro, you fired. we have promoted you to customer. You are no longer in your management position. Like you are out the door. So I have just fired that part. When I face it, it'll come me all these really weird ways. I'm just like, not today, brother. I have promoted my higher self. My intention will reign because I will it. I decided it and I had all the good reasons to do it. And anything you try to sell me or tell me or do is actually opposing the will of me and the higher power. So I am not listening to you. You are absolutely fired. And for some reason, that psychological thing of I have fired that lower part of me has been working. It's actually helped me recognize it and be like, not today, buddy. You're not doing it today. So
I love that analogy. That speaks volumes. And I want to add that shows up in any part of your life,
yes,
right? You're talking about rising at 4:30 so you can get to the gym, and your Satan is saying, no, I want to stay in bed. It's comfy and warm here. But you also told a story of going into your house and feeling angry, right?
yes,
And that little Satan of yours is, your intention is to, right, create a space of gratitude. And there's that little chatter thought saying, oh, this isn't so important. Oh, whatever. I don't really want to do this. This is going to take some work.
exactly.
But if you follow through and you actually follow through on your intention and, take the time to think it through, feel it, and take the actions that you really want to take, you're just going to be so much happier. So, the results that you'll see will be so much different. Your life will be better.
It's so true. And it's like, it is a small investment. It always is. There's always this little exchange, a sacrifice of energy, if you will. You must make a sacrifice for you to get the reward. It's the marshmallow thing. It's the marshmallow experiment that they talk about. You must, like, if you can have one now or you can have 2 later. It's like you must choose 2, but you have to sacrifice the feelings of giving up this moment. That's with like, oh, I want to, lean out right now. Well, the little Satan of me wants that cupcake. No, you're not getting the cupcake because we're getting the bigger result, which is the leaning out, because that's much bigger than a cupcake. But the little things will come and nip at you, and they will try to, and I say nip, they'll actually seduce you. There's the Hercules story where Hercules is on the path. And this is such a great, they just capture this so well. Hercules is on a path. He comes across 2 women. The first woman says, Hercules, I will give you all the wealth in the world. You will have the adornment of kings, and you will have, and you'll never have to work a day in your life, and you'll have all this pleasure, and you'll have, basically anything you want. And it will be easy and everything will just be wonderful. And that female, she was a little bit made up. She had a little bit of, like makeup, and she was kind of dressed, and but she wasn't, she's described as being like made up, but not beautiful. Right. The second woman, she's not made up at all. She's much more natural, but she has a slight beauty to her. And she says, Hercules, I will tell you the truth. If you come with me, you will have to face many demons. You will have to face many hardships. But through the hardships and through the struggles, you will earn the respect and the adornment of the gods. Obviously, we know which one Hercules ultimately chose. But that moment where he's on the path is the exact moment that we face every day, whether we're trying to lean out, go to the gym early, get our work done, whatever it is. It's the same thing. You can have this cupcake now, or you can sacrifice the cupcake now and come and do something a little harder that's going to give you a much greater reward. And it's like micro versions in our life every day.
Indeed. May I add one other piece, something that I've done that has really had an impact on me?
Yes.
One of the things that I like to do with my clients, especially early in our relationship, is to do some visioning work. And that could be really basic, or it could be like your entire life. What do you want your entire life to look like? Or it could be as simple as like, what do you want your next day to look like? And that's you build your vision out of intention. Right? We've been talking about intentions.
Right.
So that's another piece that's been really helpful and useful, is to create visions, and visions for 5 years, visions for 1 year, visions for the week, visions for the day. Wake in the morning and say, well, how do I want my day to be today? How do I want to show up for my family, for my coworkers, for my friends, for myself? Create that vision, and then follow through the thoughts, the feelings, the actions that are actually going to bring that into reality.
Mm-hmm. How do you do that? How do you I get, like, do you write it down as like a journaling exercise? You picture what you want and then you capture that.
Yeah, that's it. That's
And
it.
then what do you do when so like you have this vision? Like, I think that I'm speaking about myself. I have a vision for my life. I know what I want. I see it. I imagine, I keep recreating it in my mind, but then I keep getting faced with the reality of what I have. And it just, they don't, I can't get them to butt up against each other. It's like, yeah, but it's just not happening. Or, like, how do you mentioned, for example, and this is probably a key to it, which is that I'm not getting my thoughts, feelings, and actions maybe aligned with my vision. But what are the what's the practical step from vision to reality? How do you connect that link?
That's a great question. And we've talked about it already. And I think it's gratitude. Be
Gotcha.
grateful for what you have now, and what you see in the future will come to you. Now, it's going to take work, right?
Yeah.
It's not just going to come into your lap, right? We've been talking a lot today about the work that it takes to create and be the kind of man that you want to be, the kind of person, father, husband, partner that you want to be. So it's going to take work. But if you can create the vision, be grateful for what you have, put in some of that work, the sky's the limit.
It's funny. I recognize, like, I love that you said what we've talked about. This is the way to get there. And I'm so glad that you said that. And I literally was just thinking, as you said that, the vision, you get this vision in your life, the you that's in that vision is different than the you that's in your reality right now. And you cultivate these feelings, cultivate these thoughts, cultivate your actions as you continue to work on that inner world. That reality, or I'm sorry, that vision starts mapping, where it's like, here's this vision I have. Here are these feelings I really need to work through. Here are these thoughts I really need to work on. Here are these actions I need to put some work into. And as you cultivate those, that vision just gets closer and closer and closer and closer.
That's right.
That's awesome. I love that so much, Ian. Man, this has been awesome. I feel like, just this stuff can't be overstated. I feel like in so many ways, like, people put some of this inner work into a camp where it's like, yeah, I get it. Thoughts, feelings, I get it. But they don't really get it. Like, they're saying they get it, but it's like, no. When you have done it and you get, like, I got a small example. This would be a good example. I struggle with jealousy. This is what I mean by get it. There's a difference between I get why it's important, which means I understand the importance based on what you have said. What a person has said, I understand. However, when you get it, and you have it, you possess it within yourself, that's different than when you get it and you understand it.
So true.
Two different get it's. Okay. You can get it and you understand what I'm saying, but until you get it and you feel what I mean, they're different. So I had jealousy. I struggled with jealousy, and it turned out. So jealousy was my thought, feeling, and action. Okay. Thoughts would happen, feelings would happen, actions would happen. And what it would be is it would be me sabotaging relationships, me being with wonderful women that I couldn't hold a relationship with because my jealousy was showing up. The moment I let a woman into my heart, jealousy was right there with her. And didn't have anything to do with her. It didn't have anything to do with our relationship. It had to do with me. I had jealousy, right? And in part of that turned out after I did the work with a therapist. I did some EMDR on this. I did some past integration stuff. And we'll look back in my childhood. Where's the first place that I was hurt by a woman? Where's the first place I felt insecure in a relationship with a woman? Where's the first place that I felt that I would be betrayed? It was with my mother. I did the work on my mother and I did this. I did some EMDR. I did a lot of stuff around this. And this trauma had been trapped in me from literally like 4 years old. And then it had been sabotaging relationships from the time I was like 14 years old. And it wasn't until I was in my mid-20s that I did this work. And when I did, the difference, when I say this is where the difference of get it, I get it. I should go do the work and I should think about the past and I should whatever. I could have told you I understand that that's what you're supposed to do, but I couldn't have told you what it actually looks like in person, what it feels like when it's done. When it was done, this is how I knew that I had completed my work in terms of that particular part of myself. And I'm sure there's still more work to be done. I say completed to a certain extent. I don't want to say I'm not exonerated, but I did so much work that my partner at the time, she was in a photography school at a college. And she shared with me that day, and she was hesitant to share because she knew my jealousy, but a couple of guys had been hitting on her, flirting with her. Normally, my blood would be boiling. I would have been like, oh, what would happen? And my brain would just go to these random crazy thoughts, just awful, awful thoughts, poisonous thoughts to myself, poisonous thoughts to the relationship. But that is not what I thought. What I thought when she said that was, that must have felt nice.
Nice, dude.
And in my head, like, I was just like, that is so different than me. That is not me. And yet it is me. I totally felt like that must have been kind of fun. Having a couple of guys think you are cute. Anybody's going to see that. And I'm like, literally, like, I was okay and like playing with that with her. And in my head, I was like, wow, I have really healed something in myself. This didn't have control over me. This didn't possess me. That's the difference between getting it on the surface level and actually having it in your possession. And that's why this stuff matters, is because it plays out in your relationships. I sabotaged almost every relationship I had before that girl. And it was because of jealousy. And so, man, guys, I hope you guys are enjoying this. I hope you've enjoyed this show. Ian, thank you so much, brother. Anything that you would like to share with our guys? Maybe some last words, last remarks before we go.
Yeah, absolutely. As you were describing that story, one popped up for me. And good on you for seeking the help. That's the thought I had, right? Like, it's cool to like hear this podcast and hear a couple of fellas who've put in a lot of work, have changed their lives. That's real.
Yeah.
And it can be real for anybody, but it takes help, right? You need to find people that, and I think a lot of men are reluctant, right, to seek help. Our culture doesn't really accept that very well. But if you're really serious about wanting to transform your life, find some people that can help you do it. It's really important. It's hard to do it on your own. That's my final thought.
Thank you so much, Ian. I don't think you can do it on your own. I think it does take getting out of your own head. If you could do it on your own, you probably would have already done it.
Right.
So true, Ian. Thank you so much, brother. This has been awesome. I'm really honored to have you in my network and have you as a friend. And I just loved this, man. I really enjoyed this today.
Yeah, me too. And thanks for having me on, Brandon. And I hope your audience really gets some really good value out of the conversation that we had today. It was a lot of fun.
Good. Ian, where can people find you?
The best place is to send me an email. Actually, iantompkinscoaching@gmail.com is the best place. I am also on Instagram and Facebook.
Awesome. And what is your coaching focused on?
Yeah, helping people look at their thoughts and create different states of being.
Awesome. So guys, if you're inspired by this work, if you would like to do some of this work, please do reach out to Ian Tompkins. I think you'll be extremely pleased. And as always, thank you so much for listening. We hope you have a beautiful and blessed day, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Cheers.
Cheers. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you've received some value from it, please share it with other dads and consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform, and we'll see you in the next episode. Looking for support with your fatherhood journey? Go to bedadly.com and take our Dadly Disposition quiz and learn helpful insights on how you can overcome power struggles with your kids.